Hi there, my name is Chef Mike Benninger. This afternoon we're here at Le Chef Complet here in downtown Burlington, and I'm going to make for you one of my favorite holiday savory desserts, Parmesan crackers. Very simple to make, anyone can make these, 5 or 6 ingredients that everyone has. Let me show you what's in them. You start off with 1 stick of salted butter, you can buy that anywhere, 1 cup regular flour, we'll need a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of fresh cracked pepper, and a tablespoon of fresh chopped rosemary, along with 3 ounces of freshly grated Parmigiano cheese. Now when you make something like this, the important thing is to cream the butter and the flour together right away. And you want to spend time doing this because what happens, you gotta post that out, what happens is you need to really spread the flour and the butter together. You want the fat to separate through. If you don't spend the time here doing this, what's going to happen is the texture will not be right and they won't hold together well at all. This takes about a minute or so. A stand mixer really makes your life easier doing something like this. You can do it by hand. It simply takes a very long time and the results just aren't as good. While that's happening, let me explain to you what else we're going to do here. Parmesan cheese is one of the key ingredients here, and you really want to get the good stuff that comes in the brick. It's not cheap, I won't say it isn't, but it only takes a few strokes of a good grater. The flavor is so much more intense than the stuff out of the can, and I think is actually a better quality experience. What we're going to want for today's recipe is about 3 ounces. Now 3 ounces of freshly grated Parmigiano would be about a cup, and that's about a cup there. If you're going to make an error, you want to have too much and not too little, because it really does help the dish. Now what we're going to do, let that keep blending for a minute. What's happening now, you really can't see so well, but the fat is being integrated into the flour, and I'm going to stop that for a minute, and I'm going to use my handy dandy human spatula here, and I'm going to make sure that everything's great, everything's off the walls, that's nice. Let that go again. This takes about just a few minutes, 2 or 3. There we go. So what we're going to do now is add 1 teaspoon of salt, preferably kosher. This is freshly cracked black pepper. If you don't have one of these, an adjustable pepper mill, they're fantastic to have. Give you different grates and different grinds. Fresh grate peppers taste so much better than just stuff out of the can. You want 1 teaspoon there. Now I like to use this for this dish. Not everyone likes this kind of flavor. I personally do, but that's just me. Next thing, fresh rosemary. You can get away with dried herbs doing some things. You can get rid of dried herbs for sauces and stocks. However, for something like this, you really, really want the fresh stuff. It's available year-round. It keeps in your fridge for a very long time. It's quite hearty. And the flavor that it brings to the dish, especially in a case like this, whether you're barbecuing, it's really good for that. Probably lasts in your fridge about 2 or 3 weeks. What you want to do though is make sure you chop this up fairly finely, because you don't want a really big piece of rosemary. It is quite strong. Not everyone enjoys the flavor. So now we're going to add the rosemary, about a tablespoon. And again, don't be shy. It's really good stuff. Pop this up. Add our cheese. Again, it's about a cup. And you want to go back to just a little bit here. Do not spend too much time watching this go through. 45 seconds, maybe a minute, no more than that on a nice slow speed. What you're going to end up with is a batter that looks kind of like this. Push this down, it looks just like a usual shortbread batter, except for obviously it's got some savory notes to it. What you do, just give it a stir, make sure it's all off the side. You can see how it kind of sticks together. Sometimes you got to add a little bit more flour depending on how new your flour is, what its moisture levels are. If the moisture levels are really high because it's brand new, you might need to add a little bit more. But again, too much cheese is actually better than too little. What you do, take this batter, and I like to use Zip-Top bags. Zip-Top bags are wonderful things. They're very inexpensive to purchase. They're available everywhere. You can reuse them, especially if you don't put raw meat in them. And what you can do is you can use this rather than actually work very hard. What I've done here, take the Ziploc bag, roll it out, take your batter, open the bag up, pour it all in, use this to kind of knead the batter around, and then what I like to do is push it all down to the bottom. Because eventually what you want to do is you want a kind of a cigar-shaped roll about. And what you do by pushing this down, You can use the bag to help roll it up for you and not get it all over your hands. This has to go into your freezer for about 25 minutes or half an hour, or your fridge for about an hour after it's made, because what you want to do is you want all the fibers to relax a little bit. Now you take it, cut the bag open. You can't recycle this bag, unfortunately. Push your dough out. And what you want to do is you want to cut this into portions about the size of a loonie, but about, say 4 or 5 millimeters thick. This log right here is going to give you a tremendous amount of pieces. So you take them, and you cut it like that. Now what I like to do after I do them is kind of shape them up, because you don't want them to fall apart, just like shortbreads are. You can actually use they have machines now for doing shortbread machines, where you actually put the dough on the top and it presses down for you. I don't really worry about that. I think you need to have some variety in what they look like. Slice these about 4 millimeters thick, just like that. Now you get a lot out of one roll here, and these are very rich. You don't serve 6 or 7 of these to people, you serve 1 or 2. So what you want to do, just like that. And again, don't worry about them being perfectly consistent. It doesn't really matter. There's a lot of safety in this recipe. You can easily cook them for a minute or 2 longer. Done. I won't bore everybody by cutting up the entire roll. You see what has to be done here. You want them to be about that size though. If you want to make them perfectly round, or put a bit of rosemary actually in the top of every single one like that, feel free to do so. I usually don't bother. These go into a 425-degree oven for about 10 or 12 minutes. And what you want, maybe a bit longer in your oven, you want them to be just lightly browned around the top edges there. And if you've got enough cheese in there, you'll see them bubble very slightly. The trick though is do not move them off the sheet when they're very hot, because the fibers that's inside, it's butter holding it together, and it really needs to set up for a little bit. Let it sit in this sheet for just a few minutes. Let them cool. You want to serve them lightly warmed or at room temp. They're not very well when they're chilled. The flavors tend to be a bit dry. Well, this is how I like to serve them, just the way they are, warm with a glass of red wine. Grapes are a beautiful accompaniment. As well, things like watermelon or other fruits will be very, very good.